Welcome to everyone. Welcome, dear panelists, and welcome, dear audience. We're very happy to have you. For those who are still coming in, they will be able to join on the way. So welcome to this dialogue with ETH Zurich and the Global Shapers community, the youngest member community of the World Economic Forum. Our topic today, as you know, is for a world without barriers, removing obstacles in daily life for people with disabilities. This dialogue will be moderated by Victoria Iverson and myself. Victoria is the International Relations Officer at ETH Zurich, and my name is Valentine van Toggenburg-Bulliard. I'm the curator of the Global Shapers Zurich Hub and privileged to have been working with persons with disabilities for many years. So let me ask you a question. What is your aspiration today within the current state of the world? While you think about that, let's look at a very short and inspiring video.
CYBATHLON is more than a competition. CYBATHLON is emotion and innovation. It moves people and technology. Numerous teams from all over the world compete against and with each other with one common vision: a world without barriers. Around 15% of the world's population lives with some form of disability and often face barriers in their daily life. And this despite of 175 countries which have committed to removing barriers, protecting people with disabilities against discrimination, and promoting their inclusion and equality in society by signing the UN Disability Rights Convention. Assistive technologies can help people with disability overcome some of the challenges in their daily life. But unfortunately, the acquisition and use of such technologies are still difficult for various reasons. Sometimes research projects do not sufficiently consider the needs of the people concerned. Due to political factors, high production costs and prices, many people can't even afford assistive technologies. The inclusion of people with disabilities in everyday life is often limited for those reasons. Awakened by these observations, Professor Robert Riener from ETH Zurich initiated the non-profit project CYBATHLON in 2013. He believed competitions would be the best way to drive the development of new assistive technologies and to raise public awareness of the challenges people with disabilities encounter. The idea was well received by scientists as well as people with disabilities, but also the great response of the media and the public encouraged Professor Robert Riener to develop his initiative further. Since then, many international competitions have been held. Broad attention is guaranteed when teams from all over the world present their many years of research and development in assistive technologies to a large audience on the CYBATHLON platform. The competition is unique for the audience and especially for the participating teams. Teams are motivated to continuously improve their technologies and to bring research forward, and thus push a sustainable improvement in the quality of life for people with disabilities. For a world without barriers.
Wonderful. So what's your aspiration today? Are you actively shaping the world that you want to live in? A world that is diverse and that opens opportunities for everyone regardless of ability. Today, together with you all, dear panelists and dear audience, we include everyone in this, we want to contribute to a more inclusive world. I hand over to Victoria.
Thank you, Valentine. And before we introduce you to our distinguished speakers, let us briefly share with you what the Davos Dialogues are all about, because this is the context in which our conversation today is happening. The Global Shapers are a community of the World Economic Forum, which you will best know from its annual meeting that takes place every year here in Switzerland in Davos. The Shapers are made up of passionate young people who want to improve the state of the world. They are self-organized into city hubs, and we are pleased to collaborate today with the Global Shapers Hub, Zurich, of which Valentine and our speaker Daniel are both representatives. ETH Zurich very much supports the Global Shapers' aspiration to rebuild tomorrow's world differently than the one we live in. And so the Davos Lab is an incubator of the world's first grassroots and youth-driven recovery plan. This plan will be launched at the World Economic Forum's special annual meeting in Singapore later this year, and will focus on 10 big recovery efforts to reset economic, social, and environmental systems. And hopefully it will define a new vision for youth activism and collective action for the current decade and beyond. In our dialogue today, we'll be focusing on two of the questions identified by the Davos Lab as critical issues requiring global attention: inclusive jobs on the one hand, and digital access on the other. Back to you, Valentine.
The goal of this session is to contribute to this recovery plan Victoria talked about. And therefore we need to come up with concrete and actionable proposals. So we want to hear your views on what it takes to remove barriers and obstacles in daily life for people who face disabilities. You can write your ideas and your inputs in the Q&A function in this Zoom meeting.
A few words now on how we're going to run this session. We'll first hear from our panelists. They will discuss and converse amongst each other. And then we'll have an opportunity to put your questions to them. So along with any recommendations and ideas you have, please also put in the Q&A button below any questions that come to mind during the conversation or that you might have already thought of now. I promise that we will make time to get to them later on. If you're also interested in interacting on social media, please do so. We've got the hashtag Davos Lab going on, and you can tag at ETH_EN, at Global Shapers, and at CYBATHLON in any of your posts, and we'll be sure to give you a retweet or a like. And just to remind everyone, this session is on the record. We'll post the dialogue online via our channels, and also share it with anybody who didn't have the opportunity to join us live today. And so over to our distinguished panelists. First up is Maria Rosanna Fossati, who is a postdoctoral research fellow at the Istituto Italiano di Tecnologia. Did I get that right, Maria? Sorry for my pronunciation.
Yes, was perfect. Istituto Italiano di Tecnologia, yes.
Thank you, Maria. I'm interested in hearing from you what you're working on right now, and perhaps what's keeping up at night. Do you have something that's challenging you in particular?
Yes, thank you for the question. Well, I am a designer, but I work in robotics at Istituto Italiano di Tecnologia. In the research line, the name is Soft Robotics for Human Cooperation and Rehabilitation, led by Professor Antonio Bicchi. And what I do every day is try really to improve our prosthetic hand covering and finishing. Because since this robotic hand has started to be experimented as a prosthetic hand, finishing, all these finishing aspects and the hermeneutic aspects really raised up. And with my research group, we try to deal also with the personal social acceptance of the prosthetic itself, and also with the social elements like exploring stereotypes and so on. And yes, sometimes in the middle of the night, I surprise myself thinking about which could be tools and methods to include also prosthetic end users with this technology development process.
And can I ask you very quickly before we get to the other panelists, you yourself were also a CYBATHLON pilot during the Global 2020 edition last year. Do you have any personal experiences of this question of social acceptance that you're willing to share with the group today?
Yes, my position is particular because I am a designer, so I know tools to really improve this social acceptance. Yeah. And so to improve the finishing of the end, but I'm also have been a pilot for the CYBATHLON, so it's really interesting for me living both these aspects as a professional, as a designer, but also with my life, with my personal experience being an end user.
Thank you so much for sharing, Maria. Valentine?
So I'm turning to you, dear Christian Lohr. You are a member of first of all, you're a friend of mine. You are also a member of the Swiss Parliament and the Publicist. So I want to ask you what you are working on right now and what keeps you up at night, either because you're so passionate about that you can't sleep or because it worries you.
Thanks a lot, Valentine, and all the audience. It's quite hard to start anywhere because I could tell you stories about 2 or 3 hours, but I try to be short. I'm currently very intensively involved with reform of the pension system in Switzerland. In doing so, I'm paying particular attention to improving conditions for people with impairments on the one hand and for women on the other. However, sustainable structural adjustments require in-depth analysis because a pension system is dependent on various factors. The value of the work performed over decades must be appreciated in a spirit of solidarity. I'm convinced about it. I see it as a challenge, but also an honor to be able to work on this reform at now, and I hope to help shape them. It's only one thing I'm doing because I always want to do things for our society. I always try to be not only a politician who works for people with a disability, because for me and for my vision, we don't have different fields of politics. We have just one big goal and one really world, and we have to work together. So I want to be a politician who works for the society. In recent weeks and months, I have been burdened by the developments surrounding the corona pandemic. Again and again, important decisions we have to make that are not understood by everyone, you know it as well. All of our lives are affected, even impaired by the virus. All of our lives affected, even by society across all generations is required. I'm very often preoccupied at night by the anger and the hatred that is palpable among certain sectors of the population. I wish that we could deal with these difficult subjects in a more humble way. For me, it's quite strong to get bad emails, bad calls, and to be spoken on the street and by the people who they give me really a feeling of hate and like this. You know, you Valentine knows as well. I'm a man of a lot of humor and who wish to have a good feeling in life, and to be really hated. It's a new experience in the last a few months, and it makes it really not easy.
Thank you for this very open sharing, Christian. Victoria?
Yes, we'll have an opportunity to get back to those points later, Christian. Thank you for sharing. I'm turning now to Robert Riener, who is a full professor for sensory motor systems at the Department of Health Sciences and Technology at ETH Zurich, and who was also mentioned in that little video that we showed earlier as the initiator of the CYBATHLON. You were very busy at the end of last year, Robert, with the CYBATHLON Global 2020 edition, but what are you up to these days, and tell us, what keeps you up at night?
Yes, many things. The CYBATHLON was, yeah, you can really say a great success also because of the great job the team did. There's the operating head, Roland Sigrist, and his team who were mainly responsible for the last event in November last year. And already the event 2016, the big one, was a success, I would say. We got a full stadium. We got many teams coming over the years, again and again, to the different competitions which we organized. We could we could entertain the audience. We could also bring the pilots to the race tracks. We could engage the teams and engineers and scientists and therapists and physicians from all over the world working on that event, working to improve their technology, talking, communicating to the people with impairments, convincing them or getting convinced by them to join the competition, to join the CYBATHLON. So it was successful from that point of view, from an event point of view. But we are still not at the end. There's still a lot to do to fulfill our vision and mission, which is to promote not only the development of technology, to promote better technology, but also to improve inclusion in our society. The CYBATHLON is just a media to promote inclusion. And we can attract many people, not only people with disabilities, but also people who like technology, who like robotics, who like events, who like competition. It's a bit like sports maybe. And in this way, we can bring them together and engage them. And but that's still a lot to do to include more people to get engaged, to get them engaged. At the moment, I would say we did a good job in reaching out to many scientists working in our field of assistive technology, many engineers, many families or little children who like robotics, but it's still a small fraction of our society. And what we have to do is to get more visibility, to reach out with some tricks maybe, not only by showing what the CYBATHLON is, but also by showing how technology can improve the life of many people in our society. And I address this not only to people with impairments, it's any person in our society who can feel better, can do better when we can include a larger fraction to any activities in our society. So there's a lot still to do, and I have a good time at the moment because I'm on sabbatical for quite a long time, 1 year altogether. It's still till August in Italy, in Florence, and right now sitting with a view to the Arno River. And this gives me time to think about many things. I also met an Italian designer who helps me to draw some of my visions. And at the moment, just to mention one thing I'm working on is on a new kind of exhibition for a museum, for many museums, where we can attract a large fraction of our society to explain the aspect of mobility and inclusion for people with impairments and for the overall society.
I'm hoping that the session today, Robert, also gives you some new ideas, and we appreciate you joining us from your sabbatical, of course. Valentine, who's next?
Maybe first, just thank you, Robert, for this, for mentioning this very important aspect of bringing more visibility to this topic. And this is what we are very humbly trying to do with that discussion, because it's dangerous probably and not very helpful to talk amongst people who are like-minded only. So yeah, we need to talk about it, share, and I'm looking forward for the exhibition. So I'm turning to you over now, Daniel Vafi. Also privileged to be able to say it's a friend of mine. Daniel Vafi is the founder of the project Circleg. He's a founding member with others, and the vice curator of the Global Shapers Zurich Hub. So Danny, would you please tell us what you're working on right now? It's a big thing, and what keeps you up at night, because I know your nights are short.
Thank you, Valentin. Yeah, what I'm currently working on at Project Circleg is preparing for our upcoming prosthetic leg user trials in East Africa. And I'm happy to tell you more about the project in a little while and more in depth, maybe also in connection to CYBATHLON, which we participated in this year's edition. And what quite literally actually keeps me up at night these days, besides the anticipation of our upcoming trip to East Africa and meeting all the clients and amputees and stakeholders, is the development and production of the prosthetic systems, the prototypes that we are developing and taking with us to East Africa. But no matter how short the nights are, what gets me out of bed every day next morning is my wonderful team and our mission to bring freedom of mobility to everyone.
Thank you so much also to you, Daniel, to share with us and to bring your experience to the table. So I think we are ready to actually talk about the topics of inclusive jobs and digital access. We will turn to you, Maria, first. Actually, we will turn to Christian first, sorry. Christian, what are the main barriers in your personal and more concretely in your professional life, in your day-to-day life?
Well, first and foremost, it's about how I go about my daily life. I have concrete tasks that I set myself again and again every day. I want to make a difference by moving. Personally, I don't see myself as a disabled person, or perhaps put another way, I do not let myself be disabled. The awareness of being able to call up one's own development potential strengthens my daily actions. I'm not interested in to the questions, but in the solutions in life. The basis of my inner approach is my attitude. I feel equal, and I say it ever and every day, and thousands times. Yes, I feel and I am equal in every relationship. So it means we have to work on this point. Everybody is equal. The obstacles, the barriers are very often in the minds. However, it's not enough to simply discuss this issue. We make the greatest progress when we live together and to learn know from each other. My biggest points in my daily life, my biggest problems, whenever I can say it's a really problem, it's to organize everything. It means to have a big field of mobility, to have all discussions and solutions about infrastructure. As example, how I find an entrance which is really without any barrier. To find an elevator in a big building. How to find a room where I really can work without any problems. But that's, you know, one could say it's a problem, but I like to say it's a way to find the solution. And in the daily life as politician, I have to make a lot about to convince my colleagues about what's a life with a handicap. What does it mean to see us as normal people? No, we are not normal people. We are special people. And we want to show everybody that we have to say a lot of important things about solidarity, about competence in social items, about yeah, how to live with a really dignity. And for me, it's daily, it's a big fight. But I'm really happy to be able to fight for it.
Thank you so much, Christian, for sharing with us. You know, I had the privilege to work with you, to spend time with you on different missions that you were on abroad. And I'm really impressed and touched by the amount of, you know, perseverance and strength that is required in your day for everything you do, actually, for your political action, for anything, because you're such an engaged person. So I would be very happy if you could share with the audience how you create this sense of resilience over and over again.
For me, there are three things which are very important. First of all, I would say it's very important to be able to live with a lot of humor and not to make every problem bigger than it really is. So it means, you know me as well, Valentine. We had a lot of humor together, and it means that it's no reason to be sad if you are this person with a disability. You have to find out the life, other possibilities. So okay, but for me, it's really important to have a strong faith, and it's also important to feel free in things I do daily. I would say that's very important, and to make your own life a big sense. And I feel happy to feel it every day, every minute, every second. Just now with you.
Yeah, I can confirm the humor part. In the beginning, you know, when I first went on that mission to Japan with Christian, I mean, we didn't know each other actually, and I wanted to do it so right. I was about 20 years old then, and like really a young girl just, and at some point I was just exhausted of doing it so right, because that was my only worry. And then Christian just, you know, helped me to really get into that humor path. And I can confirm that what you have just said is really helpful, and maybe also from our side, you know, because as you said, what helps most is to live together, and this has been one of the biggest learnings, I would say, in our friendship.
I'm sure a lot of what's just been said resonates very much with you, Maria. Can I ask you now as well? What are some of the barriers that you face in your daily life and professional life? Perhaps you recognized yourself in some of the things that Christian shared with us as well.
Yes, thank you, Victoria, for the question. And yes, for sure, I recognize myself in lots of things that Christian has just said. Also because I've been working in turning buildings, products, services accessible also for persons with disabilities. And I've been trying switching the approach from the idea of access to the idea of the experience access. So it's not only about enabling someone to enter, for example, a building or to use a service, but it's also about how this person is enabled to do it. So just to give you a practical example, we saw the Soften Pro during the CYBATHLON, and it's really a dexterous end. It's really able to do, it's really simple to use, it's really functional and able to achieve lots of daily living tasks. And this is the functionality, this is the access. So it's enables someone to do something. But it's, for me, what is the most important, it's also how it enables to do it. So in this idea of switching from the access to the experience access, the Soften Pro has this, gives the end user this opportunity to experience a real and new and innovative experience of self-interaction and social interaction. This is thanks to the soft robotics. So it's real, the switching from the access to the experiences, and also to, the switch from an integrative approach to a real inclusive approach in designing solution for a person with disabilities. And moreover, also while me as a designer or architects can design specific solutions to improve the accessibility of building products and services, on the other hand, assistive technologies really change this point of view, because person, they can really experience, like all the other people, or the designed spaces, products and services. And while Christian was speaking about the entering and searching for a lift and so on, I've been really combating from this idea, not only to have a main entrance, for example, and then a B path, usually on the back of the building, that it's really discriminant for a person with disability, which it's really made people feel excluded, not included. So this is really important for me to switch in society, in designing assistive technology from this idea of integration to a new idea of inclusion.
Thank you, Maria. Do you have any other examples you want to share on this topic of inclusion and integration? I know that this is something that you're working on right now.
Yes, also because it's important, in my opinion, to design inclusive solution, to have also a design process who is inclusive. And this means for me to re-include, first of all, end users when you are developing technologies or specific solution for them, and also all the stakeholders that could be involved in all this process. And this means finding also the way to include these people who usually have different languages, engineers, end users, or therapists, rehabilitators, and so on. So it's really a challenge to find this common path. This means common tools, and this means common languages, a common area to enrich all the design process.
Great, thank you, Maria. I'm sure that we'll be coming back to some of those questions as well, in terms of what you've seen on the ground and what's being done or what's not being done in your country, in Europe, and elsewhere. Valentine, let me hand it back to you.
Robert, you know, we have seen the video of CYBATHLON, the opening video, and we just wonder if you could explain again why you founded CYBATHLON and a few more things about that, your personal maybe motivation also.
Yes, so my original very early motivation about 8 years ago was that I saw that the technology we develop in our labs and in many labs doesn't really work so well. Maybe the function is just limited. Maybe with the leg prosthesis, it's quite exhausting to walk upstairs, or wheelchairs are still bulky and often do not fit through a door. Maybe the outdoor wheelchairs, for example, through an indoor door or steps can be a problem, or steep ramps. Many modern arm prostheses are ending up in a drawer because people do not use it. It's still easier sometimes to use a simple hook. And then I wondered, why is this? And thought, yeah, we should better address to the needs, first of all, to understand what is really needed by these people with amputations or other kind of impairments. And then develop something more goal-oriented. And to do this, it's always nice to do it in a competitive way. Yeah? Our life is based on competition in sports, in school maybe. Companies need to be competitive to be successful. And so I thought, let's organize a competition. It's also a nice way to get visibility and attract many people. And in this way, push the development of better technologies. People are then maybe more, or we can bring technology earlier to the users, to the need, to the market, because of several reasons. One reason is that we can bring more teams to develop something, so get a broader basis of developers. Furthermore, we ask them to do it in a short time because there are deadlines. There is the competition and people need to finish. And many teams, many companies also came with technologies in a rather fast way, much faster than they would have done it without the CYBATHLON. So we do drive the competition in order to bring new technology, which is based on real user needs, to the market. That was the main motivation. But that was just the beginning. Yeah? And then I saw it's a great way to include, to promote inclusion, because when inclusion is based on, as Christian and also Maria said, on the barriers, not only physical barriers, also mental barriers, communicative barriers, but there are barriers. And we can use technology to overcome at least the physical barriers and the communicative barriers. We can use competitions where technology plays a role, for example, like the CYBATHLON, to also overcome, hopefully, mental barriers, non-physical barriers. And that's a new goal. That's what I figured out, actually, not from the beginning, but after meeting people like Christian, who I know also quite since a long time, and we did many things together in the frame of the CYBATHLON mainly, and also some other people who need wheelchairs or using prostheses and so on. And by meeting the people, I saw that there's a big chance to not only entertain people and promote technology, but also do the inclusion from a very broad point of view.
Yeah, you mentioned these barriers and especially the mental barriers a lot. And I'm just wondering, because it resonates with me very much, if you can explore this mental barriers a bit more, because I think when we talk about the mental barriers, you maybe talk about your professor colleagues at ETH who told, I don't know, but maybe they told you, but why are you spending your time doing that? Or maybe I think of some of my friends who are afraid about that topic because they don't know anything about it. So the first reaction is you don't look at it. Can you explore a bit?
Yes, so the different kind of mental barriers. The most, let's say, simple or most obvious one is maybe a bit more old-fashioned one, that's that people with disabilities are discriminated, actively discriminated. That can still happen, but it's, I would say, and I hope Christian and Maria can confirm, it's rather rare, at least in Switzerland and in a well industrialized world. But then there are also a kind of cases like stereotypes. Stereotypes are something between of active things done by people and something which is unconsciously done. So people might do jokes, might think a person in a wheelchair cannot have humor, for example, not like Christian. And then another kind of mental barriers are those which people do not realize. And these are the most problematic one, because since people without disabilities do not realize these kind of barriers, that they are behaving in a way which is not good for people with disabilities, with impairments, that's a problem, because if they're not aware about this, nobody is doing something against it. And they're quite common. I mean, a simple example is, for example, if I maybe would do a party here in my apartment, and there's a step at the entrance here in Italy, sometimes you have a step at the basement. And maybe unconsciously, I would not invite Christian, because I would think, he has a wheelchair, maybe it's maybe too complicated for him, and I don't want him to do this burden. It's easier not to invite him. And that often takes place in a very unconscious way. And in this way, people are discriminated. And that is happening in all levels, in all corners in our society. That also happens with engineers. If an engineer wants to develop a car, they probably in the first run would develop a new car, a new kind of vehicle, let's say. They would probably design it in a way by excluding, by not taking into account the needs of a person who cannot walk without a support, technical support. And that's also not active, that's not on purpose. But it results to something which is not useful for a large fraction of people in our society. So what we have to do is we have to make people aware about the needs of everyone. And I don't want to distinguish between needs of people with disabilities and needs of people without disabilities, people who might be more normal or not normal. It's just everyone has different needs. I'm not good in sports. I'm disabled with respect to sports. So I have other needs. And maybe I prefer to go hiking, which is not half sport. Maybe. Anyway, everyone has different needs. And we have to take into account these needs. And a short comment about technology and needs. I mean, the great chance now is that we can use technology to get rid of many barriers. Yeah? If there's a wall, I mean not in a physical way, but if there's a barrier, we can get rid of this barrier by removing the wall using technology, yeah, by making a ramp instead of a stair, or we can overcome the barrier by using novel technology, by a modern wheelchair, which can climb stairs, or by any kind of modern prosthesis, by communicative technology. It's a great chance. And it's a natural chance. It must be natural to do this. Because that's my philosophy or my idea. In many thousand years ago, there was no technology, because the technology also produces the problems actually. Yeah? Many thousand years ago, we did not have large buildings. We did not have a cinema we go to. We didn't have adventure events. We didn't have restaurants where you have to sit in strange chairs, where you have to use strange devices to eat. We didn't have cars. Where it's hard to get in and to drive it and to control it, complicated to control. Then some nice Da Vinci's and Daniel Düsentriebs did invent great technology, but they forgot become part of users, become part of our society. And that's why there's a gap. That's why there are at least the physical barriers. And now we have to catch up and do everything together. So when we develop new technology, we have to do it together with all users. And from the very beginning, take into account their needs, but the physical barriers, and by including them, by talking to them, by being together, we have a chance to also get rid of mental barriers.
Thank you so much, Robert. That was very eye-opening. Maybe before we give the floor to Daniel, I was just wondering, because, you know, Robert, you said technology can bring problems, challenges, and solutions. So Christian, you have participated, in Maria actually too, you have participated to CYBATHLON. Maybe just say in a very short statement what you think of the progress of technology and how it supports your daily life. Maybe ladies first, and then Christian, and then we go to Daniel.
Well, as said Robert, technology could really help in achieving tasks that was not possible just a few years ago. But every time it depends which is the price to pay. So, and for this is really important to consider end users' needs from the very, very beginning in developing technology. Because also Robert said, it's plenty of prostheses in drawers not used. So there is an issue there. So we really need to let engineers or technology developers and end users talk from the very beginning of the process to achieve better solutions day by day.
Thank you very much, Maria. Christian? Christian, you are on mute now.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's about technology, yes. I'm quite open to technology, and I think it's very important, and it brings us really a lot of new progresses for the daily life. I'm convinced about it. That's one point, and we have to see it, and we have to be happy to be about it, really. It's not another way I want to go, but I think it's necessary to say we have to look after all people with disabilities, and you know, we have to go for the goal to leave no one behind. It's really important, and we should see that it must be the way that everybody has a choice what he wants to go, how long he wants to go, and what will he take it for him or for her. But I think it will be important that the way will be every time only go by taking the experts with you, Robert, and I mean the main experts of all are the affected people. So I'm quite sure you will find the way, or you will go strong on this way, and you know, I will give you sometimes some advices to go the right way. Okay.
Robert, do you want to react to that?
Yes, I fully agree that it's not a must. It's the only solution is you can reach by including the experts, not only talking to the experts. And the experts are First of all, those people with impairments for whom you develop something. But even more, if you develop something which is for the first view, not for somebody with an impairment like a car, you should include all potential users and all experts which are needed in a multidisciplinary way. And to include them means also not to just talk to them and to phone them. That means that you should share time and space together. We should have development centers where all these disciplines are represented at one table at the same time. To be able to discuss and to live, not only to experience or to listen, but also to live their way of life and to experience the needs in a very intrusive way.
I think, thank you, Robert. Coming to you now, Daniel, this is actually going to bring together a lot of the things that have been said, because I've been listening to all of our panelists mention the involvement of the end user, and this is something that you're very much about at Project Circleg. Would you tell us a little bit on the focus that you have on access and empowerment with your work, Daniel?
Happy to. Yeah, I thought it too. I can fully agree with everything that has been said so far, fully support that. We have been participating in last year's edition of CYBATHLON, and we have a fully mechanical leg prosthesis. And for us, it has been a very interesting opportunity to showcase that also a simple mechanical system can compete and keep up with its high-tech counterparts. And I think while high-tech assistive devices and prostheses are advancing at an impressive pace and to very impressive levels of functionality, the reality of the situation, and this is what you mentioned, Christian, with looking after all people affected. The reality of the situation as of today is that still about 80% of people with disabilities live in low to middle income countries. And out of these 80%, only about 1 in 10 actually have access to appropriate prosthetic devices or assistive technology altogether. And it's obvious, but as you can imagine, without access to either appropriate or assistive technology altogether, you are very much confined to your home. You live a dependent and excluded life, which increases the impact of the impairment and the disability on you and your family and society. So this is not something that should go on. And we looked at existing prosthetic solutions, and often either they lack functionality, especially in a local context, or they're not affordable by often, unfortunately, orders of magnitude, or they're not available altogether because of logistical complications, remote areas, or a complete lack of an appropriate public health infrastructure. So our focus at Project Circleg lies on designing an affordable prosthetic system that can be locally produced using recycled plastics and follows circular economy principles in terms of modularity and maintenance, repairability, and so on. So by doing that, we believe that we can solve, for example, problems like import of prosthetics that lead to a lot of delay and higher costs, but also reduce the carbon footprint of the whole operation and create value locally with all the stakeholders involved. And for that, we are in contact with all the local stakeholders, from local governments to NGOs to public-private partnerships that are active in the region of East Africa, our first target market, to address this issue of affordability and availability. I think the topic of empowerment, it's quite an intuitive and easy one. I mean, if you have an appropriate assistive device and the mobility that comes with it, it allows you to lead a more self-determined and self-reliant and dignified, as you mentioned as well, Christian, dignified life. and it makes it easier to access the job market, which is the basis for financial security and independence. It allows you to take care of your daily needs and partake in social life. And so we see basically this very simple thing of just providing people with appropriate assistive technology as empowering to lead a self-determined life, and which in turn then destigmatizes disability in wider society, in my view.
And tell me, Daniel, in terms of the appropriateness of the device, I mean, very concretely, how do you actually get the input so that you understand what the needs of the people concerned are? Have you been running surveys? Have you been conducting interviews? I'm really curious about how this actually happens on the ground.
This is for us a crucial part, and Maria mentioned it, Robert mentioned it as well. User-centric design is the core of what we do. So all our prototypes, all the iterations are being tested with different amputees in Switzerland and in East Africa to ensure the most appropriate outcome. Because there is, of course, there is a large overlap between amputees in Switzerland and East Africa, but there are some very specific local requirements, local context that we can actually just investigate when we work with amputees right then and there. For example, the need of an ankle joint to use a squat toilet, or in a religious context, for example, for prayer, which is less of an issue, the squat toilets, for example, here in Switzerland. So this is of utmost importance for us, and we actually try these prototypes with amputees, get their feedback and iterate over and over to make it fit. But I would say our approach goes a bit further than just user-centric design. We want to focus on all the different layers of these, the local context and the global framework, and want to include, as previously mentioned, all the stakeholders. So, for example, circular economy principles following the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, and addressing the underserved demographic in low to middle income countries. These are all things that we feel are one package, and not just the technology with a user-centered design approach, but it's a holistic approach, and I think it's also reflected in the way that we work together.
Thank you so much, Dani. You know, as this is a dialogue that is also wanting to include not only the panelists, but also the audience, Victoria and I have just looked at the chat function where you in the audience can ask questions. And there's one question I would like to ask to the panelists. It's from Sebastian Moser, and he says, regarding the inclusion of people with disabilities, we have been talking about two main barriers: infrastructure and people's mindset. The first one requires obviously some work from professionals of specific sectors. If we focus on people's mindset, what would be your concrete recommendations to governments and companies in order to improve the situation?
I wonder if can I maybe come to Robert on this? Because you were the one who brought up the notion of the mindset. Perhaps you've been doing some thinking about this?
Yes, sure. It's a very good question and an important question, but not too easy to answer, because the challenge we have is to get to improve the accessibility for people. And it's exactly the problem from Daniel. I like a lot what he said, to making technology, which is important for some people, accessible to people, but also opening the mindset overall is a big challenge. I mean, what we have to do, I mean, it's a very complex problem, but some of the barriers we have in our work life need to get less. So to get things done, like events like CYBATHLON, but also to develop something, we have many barriers there. Fortunately, not too many in Switzerland. That's why we could do this CYBATHLON stuff, for example. But many countries are behaving in a very bureaucratic way. You have to sign so many things and to get so many approvals to get things done, to change regulations, for example, that it's a big problem. On the other hand, it still needs to be safe. If you develop something new, you must fulfill the ethical rules. We have to get faster in adapting our regulations and rules to the rhythm of the new technologies. Yes, and what always helps is money, because these things are costing a lot. Developing our things which are accessible to the people is expensive, and we need to save costs to make it better accessible to people all over the world. But that's not trivial at all.
No, indeed. And Daniel, if I can come to you on this, do you find that regulation gets in the way of what you're trying to do in Africa?
So far not, still to be proven wrong. We are still in the development phase, so we are not at the point of getting our products to a medical device certificate. From what I have researched, it is fairly similar to the European medical device regulation, but in itself is a rather complex, costly, and time-intensive device. Yeah.
Another question that I see, which I hate to bring this up, but I'm going to say the C word, Corona. Obviously, there's a number of, as we've just heard from everyone, there's a number of challenges in normal times. But I want to ask the panel, have you seen any opportunities, or on the contrary, are the challenges getting worse for disability inclusion during the pandemic? Would anyone want to react based on their own experience? With the CYBATHLON, we had to reframe the entire competition so as to be able to run it in a virtual way. Yes. I guess that was one big example that Robert, Daniel, and Maria experienced.
I mean, that was, of course, I would say, finally an advantage to produce innovation thanks to strong restrictions. And finally, the team now has available new technology, new ideas. We can get much more flexible in making events in a hybrid way. And we can include many more teams now who do not have to travel. Travel is challenging, it's costly, they can stay at home. And in this way, locally, the local hubs all over the world now did grow, I would say. And that's, I would say, the movement of the CYBATHLON did grow. That's an advantage. But of course, that's just one example, and there are many also disadvantages. And I mean, one big problem is that we are now isolated. I mean, we're sitting at home and we cannot do this inclusion by meeting people and working together and so on. And that's a big problem at the moment, but I hope it's just a temporary problem, and it's and any damage in our behaviors might be reversible.
Yeah, I mean, for me, similar experience, if it's not directly related to disability, but to the task that we are facing. For us, we are going in roughly a week to East Africa for our user trials, to Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. And of course, Corona has made things a lot more complicated and uncertain. So far, we are at the point where we know we can go to Uganda, and we have to play by ear after that. So it has definitely made things a lot more complicated. Also, if you develop hardware, it is very nice to share a common physical space and touch the prototypes and experience them and develop together at the table instead of remote. So this has been an added complication for sure. Yeah.
Thanks, Daniel. Christian, I saw that you'd raised your hand earlier. Did you also want to jump in here? Go ahead.
Thanks. There's one thing I want to let you know about it. We know Corona has changed our life in different sectors. We have a network with only people with a disability in Switzerland. There are about 20 people in it, and we meet normally 2 times a year. It's quite yeah, normal meeting like everything. But in these 2 years, we met 4 times a year, and we really discussed about concrete problems. And I took the items in my daily work as in the parliament, and I could really go strong on it with speaking with Bundesrat Berse to let him know what are the daily problems for people with disability during Corona pandemic. And I think that was really a progress in working together with the ministry. One can say it's a small thing, but it's you know, we have to start to go on. And what for me it was very important at the end of a lot of this discussion. I had the feeling that Minister Alain Berset had the feeling that the ideas to change something came from him. But obviously, I put it to him. But it doesn't matter, you know. It's just to make. I think it's all. It's the same thing about Robert and ideas. It's very important to bring people together on the one side and ideas together. You know, I don't feel really happy to have some more regulations. You know, about regulations, old, elder people, young people, everybody don't really like regulations, you know, especially in Switzerland. But what we like is to bring ideas together, and I appreciate it very much when ETH in Zurich make this progress, and I'm happy about to see you as a pioneer and in this development. And but you should really go on to bring people and ideas together.
I thank you for mentioning this, Christian. I think a lot of this has to do with starting to walk the talk, which is not always easy. But in that light, you know, maybe I can mention just a few things that we've experienced in this context. We tried, for example, very much to have this conversation barrier-free, so that we would have sign language and subtitles available. But as you can see, we weren't able to do that. So hopefully our next dialogue in collaboration with the CYBATHLON will be able to feature that. And the other thing I can mention is we have a project that's on right now at ETH, Barrier-Free ETH, which is really looking at making improved access to all ETH buildings and services. And maybe this has been a very long time coming, but it's actually nice to see that this is actually something that's being looked at now. And on that particular point, as we said in the very beginning, the global shapers have asked us to focus on concrete, actionable solutions. And so to wrap things up, I want to come to each of you and ask you very quickly, if you could make the case with world leaders and CEOs, what is it that you would tell them on focus? The one thing that you would tell them that they should be focusing on. And I'm just going to go in the order that you come on my screen because it's just easier. Robert, you're up first.
Yes. What to tell the CEOs to improve inclusion, and I would just tell them, bring your children to any Paralympic event. Let's meet together with Christian Lohr for a beer. Let's speak about anything, but with people who are different from the point of view they think, which are ignored by them in an involuntary manner.
Good. Maria, you're next. Your one thing.
Yes, you were talking about coronavirus. Yeah. And I was thinking that people with disability lives like all their life like in coronavirus. They would someday do something. Okay, they know normal life, but they just can't achieve it. They know it. It's like this. It's like us during a pandemic. There is a pandemic. It's like that. We have to wait. I would like to say to CEO really to find a way to unlock the possibility to design together with end users our higher needs, not only our emergency needs. I need to do something, but also to achieve and to improve desires, really for all.
Thank you, Maria. Christian, you're up next. What's your one thing?
I would invite the CEOs to have courage, just to have courage and to be open for new ideas, and to also to look for benefits in the collaboration. I'm quite sure that it's a big field of new points we can see together.
Thank you, Christian. Daniel, last but not least, final word from you.
Thank you. I think it's crucial to understand that this is a very complex challenge and it's very interconnected. And for challenges like these, we must include all stakeholders on a global and local level. For one, yes, but I think equally important is that everything we do must be based on a mindful way of doing business or developing things. In a very concrete way, that would mean, for example, don't put profit over all. So move from a shareholder economy towards a stakeholder economy, away from what we've been doing for decades now. Use open source frameworks, follow circular economy principle, utilize user-centric design and so on. I think that is absolutely crucial because I'd like to go one step further than maybe, Simon Sinek's approach, start with why. I would say consider the how. It's something you mentioned as well, Maria, and I'm absolutely a fan of what you're doing because it really matters how things are done. It's not the same if you have separate entrants. It's just not It really matters how we do things, and I think that is where we need to start transforming.
Thank you so much, Daniel. And with that, Valentine, tell us a little bit what's next.
So, you know, we started saying we want this talk not just to be a talk, but to walk it. So what comes next? These action points that we just discussed will be sent to a special task force of the World Economic Forum, and hopefully, and I'm sure they will, be included in the recovery plan that will be presented to the special annual meeting of the World Economic Forum in Singapore later this year. Another thing that we all invite you to really take part in is the survey. You can find it either on the flyer that the invitation flyer, or also on the CYBATHLON website, and we will also send it to you by email. As we said, this session is on record. We will also post the dialogue online via our channels, and you will be able to share it, to maybe use it as a base for other conversations of this type. Feel free to reach out to Victoria and to myself on LinkedIn, for example, for further inputs and, of course, to continue the conversation.
Thank you so much, dear panelists, for joining us today. I've been scribbling away furiously as you've all been speaking on what are some of the key takeaways, and there were some words that came up repeatedly: how, together, everyone, dialogue, inclusion, integration, to which I'd add education. And thank you for educating us today on this topic that perhaps not all of us know so much about. But we've come away with a better understanding of what some of the challenges in this particular topic might be, and we very much appreciate you sharing your insights very candidly today.
So thank you also to all the participants for actively participating through asking the questions. The ones that have not been answered, we're sorry about that, but we are running out of time. We will reach out to you personally for these unanswered questions. It was really a great pleasure to exchange with you all. And last but not least, I would like to say a huge thank you to ETH Zurich, Victoria, who represented it, to the CYBATHLON team with Roland and Annie and Michaela for the tech, the Global Shapers community, and especially the Zurich Hub, the Davos Lab Task Force, and all of you for joining forces. So now let's walk the talk, and bon appétit.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hey, thank you.